We're still alive, didn't die after breakfast. You made it to now. You got up from breakfast and it's like you turn on the engine and the gas meter, the petrol meter doesn't work and it still looks empty. You don't know and it starts. You go, God, I can't believe it. There's still petrol in the tank. That's how we should think. Amazing. It hasn't run out yet because we're not clairvoyant. We don't know how full the tank is. That's a fact. So even between now and breakfast. Amazing. So let's talk about Buddha's views of the world, Buddha's take on the world. See if it's views that we wish to use as our working hypothesis. So, I want to talk a bit more about this particular way in the Lam Rim of the four-point analysis, the way of thinking about emptiness. So I'll use the Monka Rinpoche in Liberation of Under the Hand as my basis. Like we were doing yesterday. Okay. So, you know, the fifth of the sixth affections is the affection of karma biting, and then on the basis of that, whereas Ravonka says how to train in the very essence of wisdom. And the way to develop insight. They talk about the selflessness, which is a word synonymous with emptiness, really, you could say, broadly speaking. It's used in different contexts. The selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. So anything that isn't an I is a phenomenon, in this sense. So it's all the same emptiness, but the schools do discuss these in different ways, and so the one that Al mentioned yesterday is the selflessness phenomena for this particular school of thought called the Chitta Mantras. The three ways of understanding is the selflessness of persons, which is straightforward, you know, well, not straightforward. So the discussion here is the selflessness of person, of self, of your I. And why this? I think I read somewhere, it's cheating, maybe he's holding this, I can't quote myself properly, I'm sorry. That it was Nagarjuna that started stressing the need to look into the emptiness of the phenomena, meaning your aggregates. You know, because you can really get a sense of the emptiness of yourself, but still be clinging to the owner, still be clinging to the aggregates. So then to think about the emptiness of the phenomena, which includes the aggregates, is a helpful way to really make sure you've got it right. You know. We've been discussing the selflessness of the I, but for the Prasangikas it's the same for all, whereas in the different schools they present different things. But the other ones. There's different schools of thought. Over the centuries in India, you know, they're developed. Okay, when you study Buddhist philosophy in the monasteries in Tibet, in the system that I've been educated in, Al's been educated in, other people who've done some study, you study this book, this text called Buddhist, they call it Dubta in Tibetan, we often translate it as Buddhist tenets. And so traditionally there's this packaging of four main schools of thought that were cultivated over the centuries since the time of the Buddha. And then, so there's two of them are Hinayana, and so the Theravada is probably, well, the main teachings of the Hinayana teachings in the world, like in Thailand, Burma, is what I've heard, is that's the Theravadan teaching, which is one of the remaining, I think, sub-schools of the Hinayana schools of thought, like 18 of them or something. There's only one left. All these variations, they're like variations of ways of thinking, you know? Which is perfectly permissible because they're all coming from the Buddha, who's really stressed, at a really point that's really stressed. All the teachings are from the Buddha, as long as you make sure they're valid teachings, but he taught different times, different people, which is hardly surprising. When you teach a 5-year-old one thing, when you have a conversation with a 5-year-old, you do not have a conversation like as if they were 15. You speak differently, you present things differently. It's sort of hardly rocket science. So Buddha teaches at different stages for different types of mind. So it would be wrong to talk about bodhicitta to a person whose strong lineage is the Theravada. It would be wrong. It would, you know, freak their minds out. That's not the point. We get born into this life with a certain lineage prevalent, is how they say. So anyway, these four schools of thought, two of them are the so-called Hinayana, lesser vehicle, which is junior school and high school. You graduate at the end of high school, you know. Those teachings are the Buddha. And then they divide those into sort of the two main schools of thought, the Vajrasattva and the Satrantika. I don't know what the English words are. And maybe there's some ones of those, I don't know. Then the Mahayana, and there's two of those, Chittamatra and Madhyamika, middle way, and there's various breakdowns of them. And the teachings in Tibet by all the lamas, even though they would debate with each other too, it seems to me in Tibet over the centuries a whole new bunch of different views have arisen as well, but they haven't got texts on those yet, which are also views. Why not? 1,500 years in Tibet, you know, more. 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 8, 9, 10. What's that? 12, yeah. No? How many years is it since 700? 12, 13 years. How many years since 700? 1,300 years. Okay, Buddhism's been going on in, you know, pretty long time. It was as long in India before Tibet, so it's about half-half, you know, 1,300 years in India and then 1,300 years in Tibet. So there's a bunch of new thoughts have arisen there, for sure. The Kargyupas argue with the Gelugpas and the Kargyupas argue with each other, which is okay, it's all called debate, you know, because different people have different minds, have different ways of understanding. You know, I've got, my lineage seems to be Lama Tsongkhapa, which is Gelug. When I first met my lamas, first teaching, Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, I fell into their laps, fortunate, boom, right there. So then I started, you know, I didn't know much. I started studying, you know, with my philosophy teacher, Geshe Tepcho, in England when I was first studying. And so I learned the interpretation of the text that they all study according to the Gelug, Lama Tsongkhapa. And then I remember going, you know, one of my lamas is Nyingma, Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, he's one of my lamas. I remember hearing, he's a scholar as well as a yogi, and he's Nyingma, or I think he's Nyingma and some other things, whatever. So I heard some teachings on Madhyamika, and it completely sounded like wrong view. Actually, my first experience was when I was editing books for wisdom. It was in the 70s and 80s in London, England. And I remember we accepted, I was the editorial person, so we accepted a manuscript from a Nyingma Lama in Cambridge, in the States, about terma, you know, hidden treasures, this whole kind of lineage of, this whole way of, they talk about how some yogi in the present will find a text somewhere, and it's a treasure, it's a hidden treasure from a lama of 800 years ago or something. This whole tradition in among the Nyingmapas, terma. So this wonderful lama, you know, valid lama, sitting in Cambridge, Nyingmapa, and his translator sent the manuscript. And I read it. And previously I'd been working on editing, I'd commissioned from Jeffrey Hopkins, Meditation on Emptiness. And he's this classic Gelug scholar, you know. He does others now. And it was a very fat, thick tome, totally, Gelugpa traditional understanding of the Buddhist teachings. And I remember reading this Nyingma manuscript, and I was shocked. And I rang Jeffrey up. I said, Jeffrey, it sounds like wrong view. He said, oh, that's all right. That's how the Nyingmapas talk. He was joking, because there's different ways of presenting. And when I go to His Holiness Sakya Trinzit, another one of my lamas, different way of presenting again, you know. So, because minds, we have different ways that work for our minds. We have to check that they're valid, because they will sound like opposite, not necessarily so. And that's where His Holiness comes in. He's renowned for his phenomenal understanding of all the schools of thought, all the Tibetan, all the Indian. So there's this one wonderful teaching, His Holiness, which Lama Yeshe actually requested in 1982 at this wonderful gathering. Lama would call it an enlightened experience celebration. We had two of them, I think. Lama got all his Sangha. At the time there were about 70 of us, I think about 400 now, and all the lay people. And he requested His Holiness to give a commentary on this wonderful teaching on Mahamudra. And it was based on a short little text, very short, a few pages, by Panchen Lama. And it was what was the name? And then the teaching is called the Kagyu Gelug Understanding of Mahamudra. So what His Holiness did was go through all the different interpretations of Dzogchen and Mahamudra. Every single variation, every one, crystal clear. Alex Burson edited it, and it's published by Snowline. It's the most wonderful book. His Holiness is such a scholar, he brings it all together, you know. Which of course is perfect wisdom. There's different ways of saying things. We have to be clear. Different ways of understanding Buddhist teachings. So back here, there's many different levels of understanding emptiness. Many, many different ways. Of course, the way they present this teaching, Buddhist tenets, it all culminates in this view of the school of thought, which is the Mahayana, and within the Mahayana, it's the school of thought of the Madhyamika, which is the middle way, and within that, it's the school of thought of the consequentialist Madhyamikas, the consequentialist middle ways. And it's supposedly the actual meaning of Buddha's understanding of emptiness, the actual meaning. And they use this wonderful method in the monasteries of helping develop this wisdom. Prasangika means consequentialist, and it's a particular way of debating, and it's actually really skillful. It's marvelous. The usual way, let's say Jane and I having a debate, having a discussion about things, and this is where we are so slack with our words. That's why we argue, because we're not clear, even from the beginning of our conversation. We're not clear of all our definitions. We're not clear what we're talking about, and I'm talking emotional stuff as well as anything, even about what happened down the road, or we're not clear about our assumptions. And so all this way of training the mind using really clear logic, not just to be clever people, but logic is the opposite to delusions, because delusions aren't logical. They're liars. They're confused. They're stupid. So we have to use clarity, wisdom, logic to argue with them. And so that when we're having a discussion, debating, Jane and I are having a discussion, and she hears me make a mistake, and she knows it's a mistake. She realizes I don't realize I've made a mistake. So she doesn't just argue with me, you're wrong, it should be this. She will point out to me the consequence of the mistake, because she knows what I know. We've both been to the same class, we both know what we've studied, Now, so for example, I'm just trying to remember now the way, the structure of these things. Oh, never mind, doesn't matter. But she hears a mistake, so she won't say, you're wrong. But she'll hear something I say, and because she's clear about what I know, she knows what I know, she knows my background, that you've got to have that, you've got to know she knows what my assumptions are, she knows that we've shared the knowledge, and she'll point out, oh, it follows, but therefore, this is not that. And she knows I know it is, but what I've just said indicates that I think it isn't. So I'll see my mistake. I will see my mistake clearly. So it's the way of pulling out from each other when you're debating, not just barging in and telling the mistake. You're forced to think of it yourself. Oh, it follows. Well, so what do you mean by that? And therefore this, and therefore this, and therefore that. It's a really skillful way to help us come to our own clear conclusions. Very, very marvelous way of really coming to see reality. Excellent. And they call it, and it's the actual system of debate in the yards, in the debate yards in the monasteries in Tibet, which is coming straight from India, of course. All the marvelous, in the Nalanda monastery, this amazing place. It's just ruins now. I know when I'd leave these pilgrimages to India, we always go to Nalanda, one of the most marvelous, just near Rajgir, which is where, up in Vulture Peak, where Lord Buddha said to have meditated, and where he taught the Heart Sutra and others, of course. Not far from there, this amazing place called Nalanda Monastery. It's just ruins now, and they say they've only excavated a tiny amount of it. It's massive. Any given points, 700 onwards, up to 1100, I think, unfortunately, when all the Muslims came, they destroyed the lot. I remember one of the guides taking us around when we went to Nalanda. And he said when they burned the library, all the books, it took 6 months to burn. I remember that. Anyway, it's a marvellous place. And this is where it was, Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism too was flourishing, and Tantra and Vajrasattva Buddhism. It was the peak in India. Amazing time, these times. And one of the greatest scholars who are still used, whose texts are still used in all the monasteries in Tibet. Shantideva, for example. All these amazing great beings. It was an amazing place. Rich, of course it was just for boys. What can you do? Girls didn't go there. But I'm sure some girls pretended to be boys and snuck in, It's bound to be. But they say even, this vast monastery, or based on debate, practice, all these things, one of the things I've heard is that in order to even get in, you have to debate with the gatekeeper. If you don't win, you're out. You don't even come in the door, You've got to already be pretty primed. Anyway, Nalanda Monastery must have been the one. And that's where and people from all over India, all over the world, or Asia, were coming to India then, probably from 4th century, wasn't it? The Chinese started coming to India, meeting the Buddhists, then bringing it back home. We had to wait in the West until the year 1900 or something. The Jesuits went there in the Middle Ages, apparently. The Jesuits went. They even translated all the teachings into the gospel into Tibetan. The couldn't get them. They were very polite, thank you very much, how kind you are, goodbye. They could not get any foothold whatsoever in Tibet. The Muslims had a little bit of foothold. Few Muslims in Tibet, apparently. No other religion. Christians couldn't get them. The idea of a creator was too ridiculous. They were happy with Lord Buddha, you know. Yeah? Never heard of it. What is it? Is it Buddhism? You mean? What's it called? Who said it's Buddhism? Okay, I haven't heard of it, darling. No idea. No idea. So, okay, back to this entrenchedness, yeah. Many ways we need to argue. This is a simple point that we don't like to hear, but this is the only way you're going to get emptiness. We have to come up with many different methods, logical arguments to break down ego's, the ego grasping. You see, because we think it's just mystical and you close your eyes and something special, which is we're so addicted to thinking that's spiritual, we think it'll come one day. You sit there and it'll come. If you're a very high being, like they always talk about Dromtompa, the main disciple of Atisha, and this is how they talk about the power of guru devotion. Don't just misunderstand it. I think we have to really think of it very logically, why it's so powerful. Craig mentioned this. When we understand, okay, I won't kind of go there now. So, Dromtompa, they said, had such utter devotion, absolute faith, total devotion in Atisha as the Buddha. And he got realizations. He used to take care, as he got old and hopeless and, infirm, Atisha, Dromtompa would just literally let him shit in his hands and carry the shit and throw it out. He had such devotion in Atisha. And halfway down the stairs, he got a realization. Because, it sounds hilarious. Or it's like you hear about stories like Tilopa and Naropa, and I always get confused. Who's disciple? Who's the disciple? Who's the guru? Thank you. So Tilopa was this maniac guy, wasn't he? He was a kind of crazy guy. And there's Naropa begging and begging and begging and begging for years to have an initiation, begging and begging and begging, and he bumps him and he's mad as a snake, seems like. He's crazy Indian yogis. So one day, all of a sudden, Tilopa realizes, this is how Lama Yusi tells it, one day Tilopa realizes that the time is right. Naropa's ready, mind is ready. And they're in the middle of a desert, there's dirt. He says, I'll give you initiation now. And so Naropa wants to make an offering. He's got nothing to make, so he pees on the ground, and then he gets a sand and makes a mandala and offers to Tilopa. And then Tilopa whacks him on the head. And then he gets a realization. We love these stories, So we're waiting for our Tilopa moment. Or, we don't like the stories of Milarepa, who'd been this maniac black magician through his life and murdered many people because he upset his mummy and he's devoted to his mummy, so he goes and kills all his family using black magic, like 35 people or something. So he's this crazy guy, and then he meets his guru, who is Mapa, who's one of the disciples of... Where'd Mapa come out of it? Mapa and Naropa and Tilopa are all connected, aren't they? Okay, so Milarepa is a disciple of Mapa, who's a disciple of Naropa, who's a disciple of Tilopa. And Mapa's Tibetan. Mapa's Tibetan. Milarepa's Tibetan. The other dudes were Indian, weren't they? Yeah, they were Indian. I don't know all the history. So anyway, we love all these stories. We don't like it when it happens to us. So there's Milarepa, this maniac, and he becomes devoted to Mapa, and he's mean to him because he's got so much negative karma. He's going to bash him around, He's mean to him. He chucks him out of the teachings. He won't let him go to teachings. He beats him up. And poor Mapa's wife, all these lay yogis, felt sorry for Milarepa and tried to be nice to him, But Mapa was mean as anything. Now, even just that, is so shocking if you hear about it. We think you should, he's being abusive. You should send him to prison. How dare he? But because Milarepa had confidence in him, faith in him, he just wanted to make Mapa happy, and he knew it was purification. So all these classic stories, he had to build a tower, and he said pull it down. He had to do it 9 times. He'd get beaten up. He was exhausted because he had to purify negative karma. We love to read these stories, but the minute the person we think is our Lama, who we're just attached to, wasn't he wonderful? Must be a guru. Wow, far out. Must be the Buddha. And then we hear he does something weird and naughty, then we want to sue him. The number of Westerners who sue their lamas, I can't tell you, it's hilarious. I'm exaggerating slightly, but I'm not. Because why? Because we have so much attachment, which is why we have to be so cautious in choosing the Lama. We've got to be ready. I mean, I remember one time when somebody wanted to know, talking about this whole business, guru devotion. And they said if they're ready for a guru. I said, if a person you think is your Lama shouts at you and ignores you and you see it as a teaching of the Buddha, you're ready, baby. And I'm serious. Because we're so attached, Attachment, I mean, there's certain Lamas, certain people who are out there teaching, are very charismatic. And it makes it much more exciting, If your Lama is this boring person or keeps you up until 3 in the morning, exhausted, like Lama's not boring, but it's not the activity that you think that make you happy and excited. Dalai Lama makes it excited. He's charismatic. That's cool. Oh, it's easy to see him as a Buddha. But, something, there's, different people, Western teachers, other ones who are pretty charismatic and who are pretty controversial. 1 minute you think he's the Buddha, he's completely in love, and then you hear some naughty thing, and now you're freaking out and having a mental breakdown and want to sue him. Why? It's because you've got attachment. Because you haven't been careful. Because you haven't chosen properly. Doesn't mean the person isn't the Buddha. But our mind is so ridiculous, Why am I talking about this? Okay. We can't avoid, we're regular people, and we're not the Mapas and the Milarepas and the Talopas, with a lot of merit and pure view, and we have to be regular people who've got to slog away using logic to argue with ego's misconceptions. This is what I'm getting at. Don't wait for that miraculous moment to happen. That's just ridiculous. It's just lazy. Yes. Okay, good. Go on. Let's get back. Okay, good. Let's go right back to that. Okay. So we have to use logic. So, okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Buddha gave this teaching about how we're establishing that things exist. And we've established that Maritza does exist, and she's labelled a person, isn't she? Would you agree, or a person? It's a label given. What? Perhaps. There you go. And we know that that's called a cup, and we know that's called an iPad, and that's a clock, and that's a book. We know these things. So we've got to be clear first. We've got to name it. We've got to define it. Then we've got to make sure that you fit the definition of being this person called Maritza. So now we can begin to discuss Maritza. You got that idea. We now can begin to discuss how this person exists. This is the deal we have to do. This is what Buddha says we have to do. Why? Is because we've got a bunch of wrong views about how things exist. You get that point, don't you? Good. Okay. This is the basis. So now Buddha, I don't know what sutra, where, I have no idea, gave this teaching about how you divide how a person, this object here, called this person, object, phenomenon, existent, labelled, person, very certain, in fact, how you divide it up into pieces, into bits. So we can actually divide you into thousands of bits. We can put millions of bits of your body, and we can say you're made of about 4,000 bits. Couldn't we do that if we broke down all the bits and pieces of Maritza? The Buddha chose, for his own good reasons, to divide us into 5 bits. And he used the term heap. I think in Sanskrit, skanda. Just use that word, heap, a heap of things. H-E-A-P. H-E-A-P. So aggregate, an aggregation of things, a bunch of things, right? So that's just the term that's been used in English to translate the term in Sanskrit, skanda, or heap of things. And what was it he used in the teaching when he gave it? A heap of something? What was the stuff, do you remember? I know, but when he gave it, he used sand or something as a, and his example, was it sand? You don't know. I don't know either. So I don't know. He illustrated heaps of things. So he divided a person into 5 bits. They were referred to as the 5 aggregates. That's all. That's all is the meaning of the use of the word aggregate. Okay? So far, so good. Now, let's look at those 5 bits. Shall we do that? Okay, good. Okay, the Heart Sutra is all about this, The Heart Sutra is one of these short little teachings of the Buddha that's become immensely popular. It's part of the huge genre of teachings of the Lord Buddha called the Perfection of Wisdom, all about emptiness. It's vast, extensive teachings. And this is a little tiny baby one. It takes about 3 minutes to say it, page and a half, very short, so many, 27 verses, something very short. And it's one that's so popular, all over the world people recite it, And it's an amazing, wonderful little thing. It'd be marvellous to learn it and to say it because it really puts strong imprints for emptiness. And what it is, it's this, the Heart Sutra, the Sutra of the Heart of Wisdom, they call it, which is the understanding of emptiness. And so it starts with, Okay, the Heart Sutra. All right, let's look. What it is, there's different kinds of teachings that Buddha gives, apparently. There's a teaching that Buddha gives himself directly out of his own mouth. There are teachings that are given on behalf of the Buddha by all the holy beings that are said to be the teachings of the Buddha, even though he's not speaking them. They're like speaking on his behalf. The third kind are where he inspires the mind of another holy being and they speak the teaching. Heart Sutra is one of those. Because there it is, they say, you know, thus have I heard. One time the Lord was dwelling on Vajrasattva, on Vajrapeak, with a great host of monks and a great host of bodhisattvas. Vajrapeak is a little tiny place, if you've been there, and this great host of monks and a great host of bodhisattvas. And I remember asking Geshe Tekchok, Geshe Dagpa in San Francisco, Geshe Dagpa in San Francisco, where they all fit, because it's a tiny place. Oh, they sat in the sky, he said, you know. Because they're all these Arya beings, these superior beings who've got realization. So this is where the Mahayana teachings often aren't given in this straightforward way, you know, they're more subtle, the higher beings. So then he said that Lord Buddha was dwelling in Vajrasattva and Vajrapeak, a great host of monks and a great host of... At that time the Lord was composed... Oh, what? I always forget it when I have to say it out loud. At that time... No, I have a different translation from that one. At that time the Lord was composed in the concentration called profound illumination. So he was sitting there in depth of meditation. Also, basically, Shariputra, his main disciple, who was really renowned for his realizations of emptiness, and they say Avalokitesvara, but not as like the light-bodied deity, but as a 10th level Bhumi Bodhisattva. Okay. So these two holy beings are also there, and basically Buddha's in meditation, and he's zapping their minds, and they have a conversation. They have a conversation, but it's Buddha's teachings. So they say there's these three kinds of ways that Buddha taught. All sounds pretty cosmic, I agree. Yes. No, nothing to do with that. It's one. I'm getting to it. I'm getting to the description of what the aggregates are and where this whole thing comes in. So I'm now describing one of the whole sets of teachings of the Buddha called the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. And now I'm using one example of one of those, a very short one, which is very popular, called the Heart Sutra. A short one, okay? Now I'm getting to the point. It's about emptiness. This is the point. So then they start the conversation. And Shariputra wants to know about, you know, I have to say the word. I have it in my head and I say it every single day, and I now have to speak it out. I can't remember it. What page is it on? Huh? Heart Sutra. Where? They should have a much better conference. This is too esoteric. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. I know this. 77? 76? Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Yeah, okay. Thus did I hear it one time. Okay, we'll go through it briefly, and then we'll get to the aggregates. All right, Marisa? It's a different translation from the one I know, so of course I don't like the words, because it's not what I say. This is the problem with translations. I want my words, you see. So I reluctantly read these words. The Bhagawan is one of the many terms used for the Buddha. It was dwelling on the massive Vulture's mountain, or Vulture Peak, they call it, in Rajgir. This is old ancient city, together with a great community of monks. And again, this is not actual monks, it's the Arya beings, not in the form of monks necessarily, and a great community of bodhisattvas all hanging around in the sky. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception, okay? Which is all about emptiness, whatever. And then, now this is the point. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, this 10th level 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva, Avalokitesvara, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld, here we go now, Marisa, 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent existence. So what's happening here, what this Heart Sutra proceeds to be, he then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to Avalokitesvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice wisdom, basically, emptiness? And he said that, and then Avalokitesvara said this to Shariputra, and then the rest of it's a conversation. The rest of it is Avalokitesvara telling Shariputra about this. Any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to understand emptiness should look upon it like this: correctly and repeatedly beholding the 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent existence. It's always a bit abstract, but what it's meaning is, basically what this proceeds to do here now is he's basically stating going through all the different categories of phenomena according to Buddhist view of the world. Can you hear the concept? The categories of phenomena. So basically these different categories of phenomena, which is a way of covering everything in the universe according to the Buddhist way of describing. You with me here? You understanding my point? So the first one he comes up with, which is why this word always pops up, is the group of the 5 aggregates. There are 2 ways of talking about what they refer to. One way is you use them to refer to, you can divide all the contents of the universe, of all impermanent phenomena, into these 5. You with me? And or we can talk about, and this is what it is here, the 5 aggregates of a person, of Maritza. So we can say Maritza, we can divide up her into these 5 pieces, or we can divide the entire impermanent universe into these 5 pieces. And those 5 pieces are. No, we'll say that in a second. And then he talks about, he says, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased. Never mind that. So then he says, therefore, in emptiness, there's no form. They're made up of form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness. Okay? There's just 5 ways of describing. We'll go into them in a minute. Then there also talks about no ear, no eye, no nose. So the 6, including mental consciousness, 6 sense powers. Then there's no objects of those, another category. There's no sounds, no smells, no tastes, etc. The 6 objects of those. Then there's no the sense, the eye element, and so forth, up to no mind element, mental conscious element. So it's the mind, okay, the mind, the 6 senses, the objects of the senses, and the 6 sense powers. Then there's the no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and this is the 12 links, which is the way of describing the whole of dependent arising, how we come into being and die. Then there's the four noble truths, no suffering. Then there's the all different categories of phenomena in here are mentioned. You with me? Okay, fine. So now let's look at the 5 aggregates and why Buddha chose these, because it seems fairly arbitrary initially why he pointed out these particular 5 pieces of us. I just want to use my friend Penday's discussion of the 5 aggregates as my reference here. Penday's a monk, who was a monk, whom I studied with in London English sector back in the early days in 17 when I studied philosophy. Here we go. All right. Okay. So the 5 aggregates. It seemed on the face of it arbitrary, but the reason Buddha pointed out these 5 was in a particular, some of them. Okay, not that first. The 5 are, as it says here, what was it again? 161? 77. As it says, and there's always different words used for these. 77. 78. Okay. Okay. Form refers to, in terms of the aggregates of a person, they refer to the physical parts of you. Okay? Form means all the matter. In the entire universe, it means all the matter of the universe. Physical matter. Then there's feeling. So feeling and discrimination, remember those, we've used those terms, they are 2 of the 5, the group of 5 mental factors in the text called the 51 mental factors. Mental factors is a term that we translate as state of mind. 2 of the 5 always present mental factors. Remember I mentioned those. Do you understand? Remember I mentioned those. There's a text called the 51 mental factors. Another one of the texts they study in the monasteries about the Buddhist model of the mind. Okay? So within that grouping, there's different groups in that 51. One group is the 5 always mental factors, always present. They're super important. If any one of those missing, you walk around like a crazy person. So remember I said there's discrimination, there's intention, attention, discrimination, contact and feeling, these 5. So the 2 he mentions here, feeling and discrimination, he plucks out those 2 from that 51. Actually gives them some status as being one of the 5. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Why? Because they're crucial in the way we have attachment and keep staying in samsara. They play a major role, like I've said. You know, feeling is the good or bad feeling, and then you're convinced the object did it, and you describe, you know, all this. So they're the crucial ones within the 51, and Buddha sees them as so important in relation to the way attachment works, that he points them out, gives them some status. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so there's form, which is all the physical. Then you've got feeling and discrimination, and then it says, it turns here. Okay, then you've got compositional factors, and that's just always often translated in many different ways. Non-associated compounded phenomena, compositional factors, all these terms. It's a grab bag of everything else. All the other bits and pieces, all the other 49 of the mental factors, and any other bits and pieces, you know, of the universe. For example, time is neither form nor mind, is it? So it is an impermanent phenomenon, so it's in this grab bag of all the rest of the stuff. And then the last one, are you with me, people? Anything that is not mind and is not matter. So work it out yourself. No, that is matter, dear. I just said, yeah, something like whatever's not, so it's whatever is not matter and is not mind. That's still impermanent phenomenon, but it's not, it's neither of those. So then the last one is called consciousness, which seems peculiar because we think that's mind, and we just discussed mind. But there's two ways, and this is where it gets complicated, there's two ways they talk about the way the mind works. And I never talk about this because I think you just like seems intellectual, not helpful to us experientially, in my opinion, okay? When they discuss mind, they talk about we have the stream of consciousness, which is called primary mind or main mind. And then we have mental factors, all the states of mind within that. But whatever. But they go on about this. There must be some reason, obviously, I don't understand it, but never mind. So consciousness here refers to mind in general, and then the mental factors are the bits and pieces. It's the best I can say. Are you with me, people? Yeah. What can I say? That's what's referred to by the fifth one. So form is all the matter. Feeling and discrimination are two of the 51 mental factors, and specifically two of the 5 always present, which play a crucial role in the way we have attachment, how we function. They're important to the Buddha. Huh? What, darling? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness. So form is matter. Feeling and discrimination are two that he plucks out because they're important in the way we practice. We have attachment. They're two of the 5 always present, which are 5 of the 51, and he puts them out as important. Then there's compositional factors, this grab bag of everything else that's impermanent. There's neither one or the other, including all the 49 other mental factors. You with me? You with me? And then the fifth is this mind in general. What can I say? That's the 5 aggregates. Huh? Everything that isn't the others. Okay, all the rest of it, but that's the grab bag. No, I don't know. Yeah, the main mind. Well, sense consciousness is the main mind. So it's main mind. That's what they call primary mind. No, nothing to do. It's not, darling. No, it's not a sense. No, darling. It's not emotions. Like I said. I know I've said it 17 times. I'll say it 18. It's okay. We're not geniuses, and I speak fast. And you can't do shorthand, and you haven't got a perfect memory. The monks, when they go to their classes, they don't ever write things down. They do these days. It's very fascinating. They learn since tiny children in the monasteries, the nuns too, the ones who are studying seriously, they learn to memorize. It's amazing. They become a little computer, their own library. So they learn all these texts, which seem like ridiculous in the beginning to do this. It seems like boring. But they learn all these texts. And then, of course, when you start to study, you trained your mind so intensely. It's really remarkable to see how bright and sharp they are, you know. They're able to memorize every single thing they've heard. And they go home and they think about it and they've got it in their mind, right there. Right there. They don't have to write things down or record. We can't even remember phone numbers. Our minds are so profoundly lazy and we rely on the external. They're amazing how they do this. I mean, when you see, I remember when I first used to go to his Holiness' teachings, and Jeffrey Hopkins, this American scholar, whose book, I said we published in the 80s, Meditation on Emptiness. I remember Jeffrey, he's a very amazing scholar, and he would sit there, listening to, he's translating His Holiness, and His Holiness would talk for 20 minutes, detailed philosophical concepts. Jeffrey would not take a note, and he would repeat back every word he heard. That's interesting, isn't it? That's really amazing. And that's the clarity of their mind, you know. I mean, Jeffrey's an American, but obviously got a connection to this stuff. But these young, all these, you know, in the monasteries, they learn this, they have this phenomenal memory, phenomenal store of knowledge. They're like computers, you know. You can't analyse until you've got it in you. So aren't they clever? They put it in first, then they can analyse. We can't even have it. Excuse me, Jane, don't miss the point. If we don't even have it in us, how can we analyse? You've got to look at a book. This is this. What's 1 and 1? Oh, I don't know. 1 and 1 is 2. That's how we are, like morons. Jane, stop arguing. Shut up and listen to the point. God. Listen to the point. Listen, get the point from it. I'm not just... No, I didn't... What? Okay, I know you're lost. It's all right, don't worry. I'm making you lost. I talk too fast. We are back to Maritza's question. She said, what are the aggregates? And I answered the question. So are we clear? Yes. Thank you. Pardon? Show me which ones are the physical. Point them out. But are you written down? What do you write down? Totally wrong. Complete mistake. Complete mistake. Okay, I'll say it again. There's 5. They're called form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness. The first one is referring to all the physical bits. Form. Feeling and discrimination are mental factors or states of mind in the group called the 5 always present mental factors, in the bigger group called the 51 mental factors, which is one of the texts they study about Buddha's model of the mind in the monasteries. Compositional factors is a grab bag of all the other bits and pieces that are impermanent, including the 49 other mental factors, all the other bits and pieces that are neither form nor mental factors. And the 5th group is called consciousness, which is primary consciousness, main consciousness, which includes the sensory consciousness, main consciousness, primary consciousness. Are we clear? Just whether you understand them or not, that's the division. Are you clear? That's the way Buddha divides the person. And these aggregates come up all the time. So the context here in the Heart Sutra is this discussion between Shantideva and Avalokitesvara being zapped by the Buddha, who's in meditation. He inspires him to teach what he's thinking, basically. And they proceed to say we need repeatedly and continuously investigate, basically, the way that all these categories of phenomena, the aggregates is one category of phenomena, one way of dividing the world. You understand? One way. And then it talks about how we have to look into all of these and see how they're all empty. So the aggregates is one lot. The 6 senses, including mental consciousness, they call it senses, they really mean the 5 senses, and mental consciousness is another group. The objects of those senses is another group, the 6. And the 3rd lot is called the sense powers. We don't propose such a thing, but you have to have eye consciousness. The eye sense power, which they call is, like I say, a subtle physical energy. Don't worry about it. We don't talk about that. And then there's the object called colour. They're the 18 constituents. They're called the 6 senses, the 6 objects of the senses, and the 6 sense powers. You with me? Then you've got the 12 links, the 4 noble truths, all these different ways of presenting things, you know. You understand, Maritza? Yeah, but get the point I'm saying. That all, and I'm mentioning the Heart Sutra because it came up, that all this is Buddha, and then we're talking about emptiness, so it's appropriate. What Buddha, in this is what I'm stressing, we have to analyse and think, not wait for some realisation to come. And this is what he says. We have to repeat correctly and repeatedly behold all these groups of phenomena that make up the dependent arising universe and think about how they are empty. That's all. That's the point. That's what the Heart Sutra is telling us. You know, that there is, you know, and then when it talks about no sound, no smell, no taste, no odor, no object, no body, no mind, no tongue, no nose, no ear, no eye element, no wisdom, no extinction, no this, no that. What it's saying is that there is no, pardon? No, that's the teaching about impermanence. You just quoted perfectly. If you're trying to investigate how everything is impermanent, what you just said then is perfect. But if you answer the question to talk about emptiness, you get naught as an answer. You said the wrong thing. It's okay. Things... Yeah, that's right. So, you know, we have to look at Maritza, or a cup, or a flower. We first establish what Maritza or a cup or a flower is. We name it, we define it, and then we have to proceed to investigate how it exists. Okay? Now, remember, the Buddha is saying, in the mind are a whole series of lies, misconceptions, delusions that happen to have suffering as their component. They're called the neuroses. And they cause us to see things wrongly. So we have to investigate how Maritza exists. Well, one way Maritza exists, one way is she's impermanent. She changes from moment to moment, and eventually she'll die. That's one whole approach to how things exist. That's got nothing to do with emptiness. That's another discussion. So we can see, you know, so, okay, forget Maritza, look at the cup. We've done this. If we first established as a cup, now Buddha says he wants us to investigate how it does exist, because all the delusions in our mind aren't seeing it properly. You've heard that, haven't you? One way we see it wrongly is we see it as permanent, don't we? That's a big, big, big mistake. Do you understand? Seeing things as permanent, not changing, is one of our biggest mistakes. You can see this in your daily life. But it's an easy thing to see. It's fairly evident even to the eyes, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree? And this one we have to, this is junior school, grade 1. We've got to think about impermanence. We've got to think how things change from moment to moment, in particular me, and I'll die. You know, we've got to think our cups break, relationships finish, clocks finish, everything finishes. That's gross impermanence. Flowers die. Already a wake-up call. Already God, wow, you know. Whereas we see the disconnect. We grasp hugely at things as being permanent because we're desperate to have them this way. That's a whole series of mistakes our mind makes. So what you just said then was perfect answer in relation to permanence and impermanence. We have to see that lie. But this other lie is the deeper lie, and it's the one that thinks you're inherent. Do you hear what I'm saying? One lie thinks you're permanent. That's a gross lie. You get that one down first. And then that leads you to get to the deeper lie, which underpins all the other lies, which is that you're inherent. Do you understand? So that's what the Heart Sutra is about, how we have to see emptiness, attacking that lie. Reading about impermanence attacks the lie of permanence. Reading about emptiness attacks the lie of inherent. Do you understand, Marisa? Okay. Well, that's all. We can only start with intellectual. Don't underestimate intellectual. But see, part of our problem is because we think spiritual is beyond intellectual. We just go for 30 years, emptiness, I don't know what it is. Oh, because we think it's mystical. But look at how genius, I just keep pointing this out. I remember one woman in Kopan, and I was discussing all these things, intellectual this, philosophy that, logic this, blah, blah, you know. And she said, you know, Robina, I really think this is far too philosophical, intellectual for me. I'm not that kind of person. Shut up, Jane. We understand this. Look at yourself. So I said, what's your profession? She said, I'm a graphic designer. I said, do you use computers? She said, yeah. So I said, you're telling me you're not intellectual? You haven't learned precise things? You haven't been quite... I mean, to learn to use a computer, you've got to be a genius, really, but we're so used to it. To learn graphic design, it's art, but you've got to be clear, you've got to know what millimeters are and inches, you've got to have a sense of space, and you've got to be precise and analytical and technical, don't you? So it's a lie to say she's not philosophical. But we have this fantasy of what we think, you know. But it's our lazy mind, and because we're addicted to the view that spiritual is beyond the intellectual. So don't think you can't understand emptiness intellectually. Of course you can. You have to learn the words. You can learn maths, you can learn emptiness. Emptiness is easy to learn intellectually. Bodhicitta, even intellectually, is easy. But to do them, I think even wisdom is easier than bodhicitta, actually. First intellectual, first it's intellectual, first it's the words, first it's the theories. And yes, of course it's complicated. Like when if this were music class and you started having a teacher going blah blah about this major, minor, blah, this, you'd be completely confused because you haven't learned the definitions. But you can. It's not mystical. So it's really an insight to think spiritual is mystical, that emptiness is mystical. It's not. Okay. So what we have to do is, and the way Hartford is saying, go through all the phenomena of the universe, according to being Buddhist, these categories, and analyze each one to see how it is empty of existing from its own side. And so what we are to look at here is, as I've been saying, we have to use various logical arguments to break down the misconception that things are inherent. And that triggers the insight they are empty. So seeing emptiness is the conclusion from all the hard work, the analysis. Just like seeing 2 as the answer comes from the hard work of thinking that 1 + 1 equals. So there's many logical arguments, as I've been saying. Are we all communicating? Okay. So now let's go back to let's go back to my iBook, Liberation of Karma in Hand. Ascertaining the non-existence of a personal self. And the particular approach that they use in the Lamrim is this particular approach called the 4-point analysis. The first key point. Okay, what Buddha's basically saying to us is this. There is no inherent I on this person. It's just like saying there is no blue, there is now, there is no red on this cup. It's a quaint way to talk, but get the point. Buddha would tell us there is no red on this cup, right? And we had pointed out, obviously, if we think there is red there. He's saying, no, you're wrong, there's no red on that cup. So he's saying to us, sorry people, you're wrong, there is no inherent I. There's no inherent I. You could say in this person, or on this person. Either way, doesn't matter. There is no inherent I. Sorry, you're making a mistake. He's telling us we're making a mistake. So why would he tell us? It's because obviously we think there is. He wouldn't waste his time if we didn't think there were. But of course, we don't think we're inherent. We've never heard of it. Because why? Because the entire universe thinks this, and we're all in sync in our craziness. And in fact, even, just giving context here to different philosophical systems in the world, the Christian teaching, the Muslim teaching, the creative religions actually assert inherent existence. God is the personification of inherent existence. Something that does exist, that does not depend on anything else, that is permanent, that is inherently what it is. It's a way of reifying inherent existence. It's exactly what those philosophies are. Now, the materialist view has the same view, but it's the nihilistic approach to it, if you like. There's like nothing there. But at the same time, we have to say also, we grasp, not at a soul, but at an I. Massively, hugely, violently, vehemently. This is the samsaric philosophy. And all Buddha says, every sentient being by definition has this. What defines you as a sentient being, as opposed to a superior being, there's this division. Sentient beings and superior beings. The division point is from the first moment you have a non-conceptual insight into emptiness. You stop being a sentient being and you become a superior being. You've got way to go yet. That's the shift. So by definition, a sentient being grasps at an inherent I. And that's why we suffer. He's saying this. So he's telling us simply, sorry, hey, sorry, mate. No, you're not inherent. It's not red, or there is no red on that cup. It's a cute way to put it. It's assuming, meaning there is a cup, baby, but there's no characteristic called red in it, whereas we're convinced there is. Yes, Marisa. Good, go on. Which words aren't working? Bloody hell, Marisa, let me go through it and all you'll see. She asked the same question. The owner asked it. I hear you. It's a perfect question. But wait. I hear you, dear. But you just leapt. What you did then, instinctively, like we all do, hearing these words, you leapt to the conclusion that there is no self. Therefore you think, well, where does reincarnation fit in? That's exactly what she asked. Well, what reincarnates? So both of you fell instinctively into the nihilistic view. So you have to wait. It's more subtle than that. And this is what takes years and years and years to hear that point, even intellectually. Okay, so let's keep this. Buddha's saying, hey folks, sorry, there is no inherent I on you. So this already tells us there is a you. There is a cup here, people. You can't say there's not a cup, but it doesn't have a particular characteristic that we think that does. So there is a cup, but there's no red on this cup. So there is a person. There is Maritza. There is Maritza. And on Maritza, you won't find any inherent Maritza. It's a tricky, subtle point. This is why, okay, why Buddha says, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is nothing other than emptiness. Emptiness is nothing other than form. Now, technically, that's not correct. But what it means is you cannot find the absence of red anywhere but on a cup. So there has to be first a thing that does exist, a cup, which possesses the characteristic of non-redness. You've got to squeeze your brain. It's just thoughts. There has to be a cup first that is empty of being an inherent cup. You have to posit a cup first, a dependent arising cup. You have to establish there is a Maritza. Then we can discuss how Maritza works. We have to deposit there is a mind in this person called Maritza, and then we discuss how the mind exists. So we first posit a thing, then we look into how it is empty of inherently existing thing. We have to first posit a thing. That's why it's impossible to have nihilism. It's like a joke. It's impossible. So the two truths, dependent arising and emptiness, are so perfect. As soon as you hear there's no Maritza from her own side, to stop you launching into, you go crazy like a drunken sailor into no Maritza, period. You say, ha ha, there being no inherent Maritza means there is a dependent arising Maritza. And as soon as you say there's a dependent arising Maritza, to stop the grasping at inherent, eternalistic, permanent, real, inherent Maritza, you go, ha ha, that means there is no Maritza from her own side. It's like squeezes yourself. It forces you into the middle way, which is in here, rather than two extreme views. So, again, in order to, Buddha says we're up the creek without a paddle. We've lost the plot. We're mad. We're completely lost. And what causes us to be this way and suffering and confused and neurotic and harming others is the presence in our minds of this root neurosis called ignorance, which its particular function is to cling primordially and to utterly believe in inherent I. We don't think that, we don't even know it, we've never heard of it. But that's what he says is happening. This primordial clinging to an inherent I that's findable, pointable, independent, separate, inherent from its own side, in and of itself, all these words, that we are convinced is there somewhere, apart from all the causes and conditions, apart from all the parts, apart from the mind labeling, the three levels of dependent arising. We're convinced, it's there. And the belief in that one, which doesn't exist, is the source of all pain, all suffering, all delusion, all samsara, all realms, all existence, all hell, all heaven, all human, all everything. Like a nightmare. So what he wants us to do is first. Prime our minds. Stop harming others first. Grade 1. Stop harming others, please. Back off. Why? Because actually, contrary to what you think, everything you do, Robina, produces seeds in your mind which will ripen as your future suffering. Guess what, baby? You're the cause of it. Big shock, big surprise. So quit harming others, please. Back off. First level. Then you calm down a bit. Now we can start to be our own therapists and start to look into the mind and get to the root of all the problems and see all the garbage dump of delusions in there. The depression, the attachment, especially the attachment. And then we slowly get to the one beneath attachment, which is the assumption of the I. We begin to unravel it and get some common sense and see how this is the sewer that is causing all the suffering. All these assumptions that are so wrong. The particular delusion we're talking here is the root delusion. The root delusion called ignorance, whose belief is an inherent I, inherent you, inherent me, inherent this, inherent that, inherent good, inherent bad. So just to even understand what that means is tough for us. So, Buddha says, whatever does exist, and his way of categorizing phenomena is, all of them are stated, the categories of phenomena are stated in the Heart Sutra. All the phenomena of the universe are stated, these little categories, breaking down into the entire universe. We have to look at these repeatedly and correctly analyze how they are empty of existing from their own side. And so to do this, we have to use various logical arguments to counteract ego's instinctive misconception. We have to use various logical arguments to counteract the instinctive belief that that's red. So you look at the dependent arisings, the glasses, the eyes, the colour, the light, my English language. You correct all those, and wow. Oh my God, it's not red. I see the absence of red. By fixing up the mistakes. So fixing up the mistakes here is the delusions. They're all believing in lies. They're all lies. So I have to argue with each one, precisely, each one. And the one we're arguing here is the root one. Ignorance. Got a particular lie. Everything's inherent. Got to break it down. Be intelligent. Argue. Many arguments. Many different ways of arguing. You get the principle, not insane. Okay. What, darling? It is very hard, but it's only hard because we haven't done it before. That's all, isn't it? Music is hard when you first learn it, isn't it? And we're jumping in the deep end of it here. This is not junior school we're talking here. We're talking high. We're talking, not that I know much, but we're not talking junior school here. This particular conversation is not junior school. You see what I'm saying? So if one hasn't heard it before, of course it's hard. That's why when you study in the monasteries, you start it early and you prime yourself, and then when you get to emptiness, your mind is ready for it. So it's like we're leaping into master classes here. Not because I'm such a clever person, I don't mean that. But emptiness is like really high teaching. Do you understand? And if we haven't heard much before and haven't thought about it, of course it's difficult. But then don't mystify it as being difficult. It is difficult, but we can learn to understand it. Do you understand? Do you accept that? Okay, good. That's right, precisely. That's exactly right. So now, back to, I'll keep going back to it. Try to get to it. Now it's going to be time for break. 10 o'clock we're acting. Get to what is to be refuted. Okay, back to the point. What Buddha says, sorry people, there is no inherent I on this person. Person is the name of this object. Cup is the name of that object. Person is the name of this object. Person is the name of this object. So there is no inherent I. There is no inherent person on this person. You could say that. Just like you could say there is no red on this cup, or you could say there's no inherent cup on this cup. So the implication there is a cup, but there's no inherent cup. There is a Maritza, but no inherent Maritza. There is a Robina, but no inherent Robina. So, because we first established there has to be Maritza before we begin to discuss her, which is a dependent arising Maritza. So Buddha's basically saying, sorry folks, there is no inherent I in there. But that's not enough to hear it. We go, oh really? Oh, thanks a lot. And we keep making the same mistake because our eyes are wrong, the colour's wrong, the light's wrong, and our English language is wrong. So we keep believing and buying into the red. It's fine to have someone say, no, it's not red, Robina, but you keep seeing red, so you think they're stupid. So you've got to fix the problem. Same here. You can't just believe it, what Buddha says. Oh yeah, I believe that I'm not inherent. It's useless. It's like saying, oh yeah, I believe that 1 and 1 is 2. But you can't work it out. So it's useless. That's why believing in something is useless. Okay, so then he says we've got to work it out. He's got different arguments to work out to get to prove that he's right, that there's no inherent I. We've got to prove it to ourselves, basically, and that's where the hard work is. And like I'm saying, there are many different logical arguments that we need to use, dependent arising being the king of logics to prove it, that will prove there is no inherent I on this I, on these aggregates, in the aggregates. Are we communicating? Next step. Rachel, what's coming? You're right. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Okay, well, you keep that nicely. You keep it in there. Okay, all right. So the next point, then one of it, so that if it's true that here, on these aggregates, on these parts, in these parts, among these parts, on this person, the dependent arising person, there is no inherent person. If it's true, then I'm not believing it's not enough. I have to use logic to analyze. So the first step for this particular approach, the 4-point analysis, is a particular approach, and it sounds hilarious. He says to us, hey, Robina, if there's an inherent I in there, I want you to find it and point it out to me, or to yourself, really. You've got to find it. This sounds like a joke to us. What do you mean, find it? But if it, put this way, I have a hand. Oh, you do, really? What's a hand? What's a 5-digit thing that holds things? Oh, do you have a hand? Yep. So I look for my hand. Oh, there it is, and I'll point it to you. I just found a hand, didn't I? No probs. Easy. So if there is an inherent I, which is what he calls the I that we cling to, which is why we get attached and angry and jealous and depressed and cry, and how dare you say that to me, and I did not do that to you, that talk, which indicates we think there is that I, we think there is, we believe there is, we uphold that one, we have panic attacks and fears and jealous and kill and love and hate, go to hell, go to heaven because of it. Then we need to prove it. Bloody hell. Whew. So Buddha says, kindly look and see if you can find it. And if there is, I'm very happy. Go for it. You understand my point? In other words, you've got to use rigor and discipline and clarity like we have never known. We are bone lazy. We don't even know how to do this analysis. Oh, yeah, I believe in emptiness, yeah. God, help me. Okay, so this one, if you're going to have to look for the inherent I, this is a really good point. If you're going to have to look for it, you better know what you think it looks like. Otherwise, how can you search for it? Don't be ridiculous. We just go, oh, look for the eye. Oh, I don't know, there's an eye. Oh, my feet and my nose and my tongue. You don't know what you're looking for. If I say, where's your hand, and you don't know what it looks like, how the hell can you identify a hand? You can't. You with me? Okay. So this is the hardest job of the 4 points. Once you've got this one down, seeing emptiness is easy. Falling off a log. The first one's the most difficult. And it's called identifying the object to be negated. Identifying clearly the object to be refuted. Object to be refuted is the inherent I. You with me? You've got to identify it first. You've got to be able to be crystal clear about what you think the inherent I is, because we believed in it and acted upon the assumption of it for eons past. Are you with me? This is the toughest one. Once you've got this down, easy to annihilate the belief in it. So they always use this analogy, which sounds kind of hilarious to us, this analogy of the thief. That, you've lived all your life in your apartment block, all your life, and you always believe there's a thief lurking around the corner. Actually, I remember when we were kids living in Murrumbina, in Melbourne, and Nanny, our grandma, Mummy's mummy, would always tell us that Detective Kelly lived in the garage to protect us. Of course, we completely, totally loved Detective Kelly, but we'd go looking for him. And we had this old 1930s dump, this is in the 1950s, we had this old dumpy broken down car in the garage, and it was always so exciting to go in there and try and find Detective Kelly. We would look and look and look for it, but we totally believed in Detective Kelly. It was so helpful that Detective Kelly was taking care of us. How kind our grandmas are, you know. But my grandma would also tell me that if I ate oranges and drank water at the same time, I'd bubble up and burst. And I believed that too. Well, even when I used to have my lunch at school, I'd go to convent, and we'd have, you know, my mother would give us hot lunches, so we'd join the boarders and have lunch. And I would never eat my oranges and drink water. Even though the other girls didn't bubble up and burst when they did, I had total faith in Nanny. Isn't it interesting? But Detective Kelly, I'll never forget, he protected us. I felt so good that Detective Kelly was there. How kind my grandma was, you know. My God. We'd look and look and look, convinced he'd come out one day and we'd catch him, you know. We could never find Detective Kelly. Anyway, I mean, we left that house when I was 15, so it has to be before then, doesn't it? I don't think I was looking for Detective Kelly when I was 15. I was looking for boys. Or 13 or something. I can't remember. 1959, 44, 14 I was. Okay. Now back to identifying the object to be refuted, the object to be negated. That is to say, the inherent I that we think is there, but which Buddha says isn't. So this process, what we have to do, and this is how you do it every day in your life. And I could talk about this until the end of the day, just how we can't see it, because 10, 15, 9, 10. Yeah, we've got to have a short day today, haven't we? What are we doing today? 4 o'clock. We have to go. Cherry wants to stop a bit earlier because you guys want to get out by 4, right? To drive on the road. Is that right? Who wants to get out by 4 to be on the road? Okay, we'll stop earlier then. We'll stop a bit earlier and we'll have time to say goodbye. And Cherry wants to do a couple of things. So we'll stop at 3:30. So let's go backwards. 3:30. But that's fine. We won't have a discussion. We'll just come back in here and finish. Yeah, we do that. Okay. So 10, 15, 7. Do you want to, we'll go a bit longer. 10:30 we'll have a break. Okay. So this is the day, this is our life's job, among all the other things. Is every time Porrick insults me, doesn't come home on time, upsets me, farts in the sheets instead of the, you did, farts in the sheets instead of the toilet, doesn't do what my attachment wants. This is a simpler one. Every time that happens, if I'm really trying to work on my mind, not to mention calming attachment. See, the grosser level, during high school, is calm attachment, calm anger, calm depression. They're the grosser ones. They're the grosser beliefs in delicious things and ugly things. They're the grosser ones, and they're hard enough. Underpinning that is the belief in the instinctive I, the intrinsic I. You with me? Underneath it. So this is much harder to catch, the mistake it makes. It's so subtle. Easy to mistake attachment. See, attachment's mistake, anger's mistake, depression's mistake. Yeah? Hard enough, but easy in comparison. But the one that underpins those, that informs those, this instinctive belief in the intrinsic I, that is attached and is angry, which doesn't exist too. Much harder to see that one arise in the mind. You with me? So how can I possibly even begin to see attachment if I haven't controlled my speech? And if I haven't controlled my speech, I can't do anything. I'm just lost. I just go blur and vomit everything out and freak out and believing in all the stories. So we've got to do all junior school, high school so strongly to prepare my mind to even be able to see what arises in my mind. Right? Won't you agree? Massive. Now, look what happens when he upsets me. He comes home late. The I is underneath, freaking out. I am unhappy because I had this attachment to him to do what I want him, my attachment wants him to do what my attachment needs, a little vampire in there, because I'm so needy and hopeless and low self-esteem and miserable and nothing and empty, because that's the suffering of attachment. So I assume he's going to make me happy. So this massive expectation he'll make me happy, right? Right? This is attachment talking. Gross delusion in comparison with ignorance. So what I'm preoccupied with mainly, I start, he's late. Right there. Now, if I'm really working on my mind, as soon as I hear myself say, he's late, I will realise, shut up, man, it's just expectations. He's okay, he's just doing his hard work, he's a nice guy, he's trying to do his best, you be quiet, mind your own business, and he'll be fine. That's working on attachment, expectations. You with me? Now, isn't that hard enough? That's hard enough to catch it right there and shut up. In 3 minutes, you're feeling fine. Oh, hello, sweetheart, how are you? Did you have a good day? That will be the consequence of checking your attachment, your jealousy, and your anger. So hard already. You with me? I'm getting to a point here. Now, if that's so hard, and they're the obvious delusions, how much harder to identify the assumption underneath them of the intrinsic I. Are you with me? Are you with me? So much harder. So it is impossible to do this until we've done the process part. But we can try. Okay, we'll talk about it. So this is how identifying the object to be refuted would look like in that scenario. There I am, you know, good little wife, with my pinny on, doing the dishes, pouring out and hard working, you know, earning the money to keep us. I wonder if that even exists anymore, but never mind, that's the fantasy in my mind, okay? That's right. So therefore, he, you know, and he's late, and I'm starting, my jealousy's rising. So already I've subdued my jealousy, I'm pretty good at that. So what I'm going to do here, and this is the subtlest one, it's so hard to do, because I have to subdue my anger, jealousy, and depression, and heard these intricate voices in my roommates in my mind. I have to notice the feeling of I rise, the feeling of I, and catch it like a hawk, and watch it like a hawk, and check how it appears to me, is what they say. How we'd say it is how it feels. And I've got to be so precise about that one. So, and this is what's so difficult. And if you haven't had any teachings, we don't know how to define that. So we have to learn the different ways of understanding selflessness. So the key one here, which is gross dependence, gross selflessness for the prasangikas, is this business of the landlord. We truly believe, we act as if, like I said, there is a distinct, findable, separate, independent of my aggregates, independent little piece of me called I, called Robina. Meaning there's another part in there, like I keep saying. We believe I know I've got a brain, I know I've got a nose, I know I've got anger, I know I've got a hand, I know I've got love and kindness and jealousy. I can point them out. I can see their function. Conventionally, we're convinced that there is another part with equal status, or maybe the boss actually, not equal status, the boss, but another part walking hand in hand with anger, brain, love, hate, jealousy. And that part, it has the name I. I believe in that one. And I actually believe it's the boss that runs the show. It hasn't got equal status, it's the boss. It's the landlord. It is the puppeteer. It's the one that is in there, we believe totally, in there, that is hurt, that is jealous, that is depressed, that he is hurting by coming home late. All our words say this every day. All our suffering is about this, and we believe it utterly, totally, sublimely, not sublimely, totally, down the bones of our being. There's never a millimetre of discussion about it. And that's why it's so... Why? The proof that we believe so totally is when we hear these words, we're puzzled. God almighty, girl, give me time. I mean, you people, I know, but we're leaping forward. You know, you just leapt 49 points. Just, this is the first, this is like, just, we can think of this for the next 27 years before you go to the next step. I hear you. Perfect question. We have to catch. So the trouble is, unless I'm trained and purified and practiced for such a long time, the millisecond he, let's say, is mean when he comes home, you know, let's say says a mean word, that's when it triggers, isn't it? The mean word comes because I'm the default assumption of attachment to get what I want, and all that is there, it's yearning for lovely words, and I get a mean word, and the ear hears it, and then boom. And then what happens that second is the I rises like a lion and says, how dare you do that to me? Already you've said that, you've lost it. It's too late to look. It's too late to identify the object to be negated. It's too late. You've missed the opportunity. And this is why, to really see the I that's rising, to how you think it exists. It assumes actually already phenomenal work at reducing attachment, anger, pride, and all the voices of the fantasy I. Can you hear what I'm saying intellectually? It's phenomenal. It's highly advanced. So it means, and even this is why all the Bodhisattva work of transforming problems, that you're so happy that he insults me. Oh, good. Thank God, another opportunity to see the I. And you're so glad, you're eager, you can't wait. Please insult me. You know, it's like a little kind of, you like being tortured, you know. I beg you, please insult me, Porridge. Because you want the I to rise so you can look at it. Are you seeing what I'm saying? So way to go. And why, which is the answer to your question, is because you now have to identify it. This is the toughest one. Then easy. Then you do the next steps, which I'm going to get to after the break. But the first is to identify it. And you can't do that if you're buying into attachment and anger and jealousy, which is normally the never-ending novel going in our head. So we've got to be, to really catch the I is so subtle, what Mongoose says, to catch the way we think the I exists. And it's only the second you're insulted and hurt, offended, upset, the car runs into you, then the experience of I rises, and that's the opportunity you're waiting for. But the millisecond you start buying into the story, how dare you do that to me? Too late. You've lost it. So it's extremely fine point. Extremely much. So in a way, and then you have to want to be attacked. You have to be glad you're being insulted. I'm serious. But our instinctive, millisecond response is, how dare, not fair, why you do that to me? Jealousy talks, anger talks, attachment talks, depression talks, the conversation starts. You've missed the opportunity to catch the object to be negated. So you've got to be a pure mind, really ready, really transforming problems, really eager and happy to be insulted, hurt, because that's the opportunity you're going to see the I rise. The I rise will not rise, believe me, when he gives me what I want. I'm like a junkie, absorbed in the pleasure of being praised, loved, thanked. You understand what I'm saying? The I is absorbed then, you don't see it. But when you get insulted, it wakes up like a lion. And that second. You with me, people? So it's really quite advanced. But the best we can do is what we can do. Yeah, I do, indeed. I love Sigourney Weaver. She's great. Go on, then. What's that mean? That's the... Oh, the one coming out, the alien, sitting there quietly until it comes out, then you see it. No, it's true. Good. Any analogy you like, use it. What? Yes, it's living there all the time. You don't see it. Anyway, the point is here, we have to be really precise in knowing how to identify how that pretend I, the way they say it is, appears to me. Or we say how it feels. But you've got to be precise. So, it's the one here, the grosser one, which is the one that's discussed here, is that it's the I, it's an I, it's an I, it's a piece of you, a part of you that you label I, a part of you that exists separately from the aggregates, separately from the mind, separately from the body. It's another part. It's another part. Now that's what Christians call soul. That's exactly what they say there is. And this is exactly what Buddha says there isn't. And it's not even the subtlest level yet. We've got to catch it out of the corner of our eye, the Bonko says. You've got to be certain about how it appears to you. Certain that it does appear as something that doesn't depend upon the other bits, but separate from the other bits. Now, let's say we have identified it with confidence. Now here it assumes we've got single point of concentration and all the amazing practice in the past. So we can, in our meditation, do this incredible analysis, logical argument. And this is where the next two come. Now we can have a break. And we'll discuss this after. Now I think we have to do Vajrasattva after. That's what this retreat is called. It's generated to Tara retreat, emptiness retreat, Chenrezig retreat. We'll do Vajrasattva retreat again. We'll do Vajrasattva after the break. So have a half an hour break, see you at 11. Then we'll do more of this and Vajrasattva, okay? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. First, try to see how your eye is, you know. Try and check it out. Get someone to punch you in the nose.